Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Modern 1054 in the 15-minute pool on ICC. This player has an 1851 rating. Let's go knight f3 on move 2. Sometimes I'll play this move order against d4, d5. There's nothing of particular value. Well, I shouldn't say that. There is some value in playing knight f3 on move 2. It avoids lines like the Albin counter gambit, c4, e5. So black plays c6, indicating they want to play a Slav. Let's do something a little bit different. I'm going to play bishop f4. And try to play a London and possibly even angle for a position where c6 is an unnecessary move for black. That's kind of a interesting concept this early, but a lot of times black would prefer to put the pawn on c5 so they can attack d4. And black responds with a quick queen b6, hitting the pawn on b2. I could try to gambit that pawn, but it's probably safer to play queen c1 here, looking to defend and also maybe play c4 later. So I'll do that. Yeah, I'll pretty much only play knight f3 if I think there's like a specific line that black might be going for after d4, d5, c4. And the Albin counter gambit is one of the only lines that you rule out with knight f3. A couple other ones, you maybe get a different position, but that's the big line that you rule out. All right, so black plays knight f6, and probably I'll just play e3. And I would expect that they would develop this light square bishop or maybe play e6. But personally, I would try to bring this bishop out if I were them because they'd like to get the bishop outside the chain to f5 or g4 and only then play e6 so that the bishop is not locked inside. It looks premature to play a move like knight to h5. Sometimes in London positions with the bishop out on f4, black will play knight from f6 to h5 to attack that bishop. Okay, so black does play e6. I'm a bit surprised by that. It looks kind of passive to me to do this. Now, I might consider playing h3 in order to save this bishop so that if knight h5 is played, I can simply drop it back to h2. And given how black has developed, I don't feel awkward about doing that. If h3 c5, how will I continue, though? That's one thing I'd like to figure out, because even though c5 loses a tempo for black, it is something they could try. For that reason, I'm almost thinking of playing c4 right now. Maybe that's a better way of handling this, because after c4, knight to h5, black would be moving their only developed piece outside of the queen. And I could play bishop e5, I could maybe play bishop g5. I feel like I'm going to get good play, despite potentially giving up the bishop pair. The only other thing is if c4 is bishop b4 check at all a concern. Probably not. I could just play knight bd2. Okay, so let's do this. I'm trying to get a leg up on black in the queenside activity department.
Check.
And maybe eventually I'll play c5. And black just whips off the move bishop b4 check. All right, so I was planning on knight bd2. Knight c3 could also be played, but knight bd2 seems a little safer. Maybe their idea is a quick knight e4, but at best I only see that leading to trades for black. I don't see black achieving any advantage doing that. Yeah, let's play knight bd2. I'll keep the knight off of c3 for now. You really have to avoid moves like bishop b4 check. It's not so much like the move itself, but how fast black played that. A check move that's played quickly is kind of a trap. It looks okay to play it, and you can rationalize it as, well, this move might be premature, but at least I'm checking my opponent's king. At least I know that they'll have to respond to that check. But that's a poor way to justify a move like that. There's that famous saying, Potzer sees a check, Potzer gives a check. Not calling modern 1054 Potzer, but there's a reason that saying exists. Checks are very easy to play, but the consequences of them are not often understood. Okay, so black plays c5. This is pretty unusual the way they're playing this. Checking and then playing c5. c5 makes a lot of sense because I think they would like to put the knight on c6. What to do now? I could play a3 and try to force this bishop to a decision, but on a3, bishop takes d2 check. If I were to play knight takes d2, they could take on d4. Although then, I could take on d5, and I noticed that that bishop is undefended on c8. So possibly my queen being on c1 could influence that bishop on c8. That line is not completely forced, though. Like a3, bishop takes d2 check, knight takes d2, c takes d4, c takes d5. Black could simply castle or maybe play knight c6. Or actually, they couldn't play knight c6. My pawn would be attacking c6. But say castles instead. Then the bishop on c8 would be defended. So a3 is a candidate, but maybe there's something better. I could take on d5. That was my first thought, c takes d5. Since then, c takes d4 would not be possible because the bishop does hang. But on c takes d5, what is my response to knight takes d5? That would attack my bishop on f4. So I don't know that I'm thrilled about that possibility. It could also just develop bishop e2 or bishop d3. But on either one of those moves, probably black will play knight c6. And that would add another attacker to d4. What about d takes c5? If I take on c5, probably they will take with the queen. But maybe then a3. Bishop takes d2 check, knight takes d2. I've snagged the bishop pair. That looks better for me. Yeah, of the two captures, c takes d5 and d takes c5, I definitely like d takes c5 more at present. I think I will go with that move. Yeah, let's do that. At any rate, black will be playing knight c6 anyways if I try to keep the tension, so I think I'll be forced to make a decision with the pawns shortly. So let's just take the initiative ourselves and do it. I predict queen takes c5. They might play bishop takes c5. I don't know if there's anything truly wrong with that move. In fact, it might be the better move. Since queen takes c5 a3, black would have to forfeit the bishop pair. He does play queen takes c5. We'll take a look at the bishop capture in the analysis. So a3 was my intention here. Any reason to do anything else? Probably not. a3, bishop takes d2. I could even take with the queen there to try to get the rook over to c1. a3, bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, d takes c4. I could play bishop takes c4 in that case. Because if queen takes c4, rook c1. And black has issues with that bishop on c8. Okay, so that looks kind of like a neat line. What if a3, bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, knight e4? Well, I would think at the very least I could play queen d4, attack the queen and also the g7 pawn. And that probably forces a favorable trade. All right, so let's go ahead and play this. If bishop a5, by the way, I can play b4 and fork the queen and the bishop, so virtually a guarantee that black will take on d2.
Check.
Tough decision between queen takes and knight takes. I'm going to go with queen takes because I like the plan of trying to quickly bring the rook over to c1, and I'm not worried about c4. Black can take c4, but after bishop takes, I win the pawn back straight away. I could also play it in gambit style, like maybe d takes c4, bishop d6, and try to stop black from castling, but I think I'd probably play bishop takes c4 instead. Yeah, so black castles. Rook c1 looks normal, x-raying the black queen. Yeah, let's do that. I'm a bit down on time, but I feel like the opening has gone well. I've got the two bishops. Let me just check this player's stats while I have a moment. So they have a peak rating of 2070, over 4,000 15-minute games played. So black does take on c4. Taking with the bishop would be natural. Taking with the rook is kind of an instant gratification move, whereas taking with the bishop contains a discovered attack threat. Bishop takes e6. And am I afraid of knight e4? Probably not. Bishop takes c4, knight e4. Oh, also, I just noticed I have bishop d6 here. Aha. So now bishop d6 comes in handy. I think that was an oversight on black's part. Yeah. So bishop d6, the queen has to run somewhere. I just grab f8, and also I can grab c4. on the move following. Okay, so let's do that. Yeah, it wasn't really worth looking at bishop takes c4, rook takes c4 any further once I noticed bishop d6, because this move is just so clearly the best move. On bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, black's queen could have moved, and they would avoid the whole bishop d6 fork idea. So safe to say that this move is going to be winning material. Let's see where black goes with the queen. The unfortunate thing for them is that there's not a lot of ways they can shake the position up here. They're going to lose the rook, and then they're going to have to take back on f8. And I'll just win c4, and it's just a clean extra exchange. Sometimes when you see that you're going to lose material, there's a way that you can convert that material loss into some sort of initiative or other compensation, because usually going after material is time consuming. Like in playing bishop d6 and bishop takes f8, that's going to cost me 2 tempos. But in the meantime, it doesn't look like black will be able to put those 2 tempos to use. 1 tempo is going to be burned just moving the queen on the next move. And the next one will be just a forced recapture. There's not like somewhere the queen can go where they could like snatch up one of my weak pawns, something like that. Queen d5, I think black is hoping that I take their queen so they can take back with their pawn and defend c4, but I'll just take on f8 and then I'll take on c4. We'll just do this. King takes f8, bishop takes c4, queen takes d2, knight takes d2, and that's an extra exchange. Could also play rook takes c4, but probably doesn't make too much of a difference. They'll play knight c6. So let's just go with this one. So just like in the last 15-minute game that I played against, I believe the player was Huge Chess Brain, I'll be up in exchange and trying to convert. Okay, and he actually just resigned straight away here. Quick game. Let's go back and have a look at it. I'll probably play another one, by the way, just because this game was so short. So yeah, knight f3 on move 2 does rule out e5. Just a nice way to vary your game from time to time. I played it a couple times over the board. So c6, and playing c4 would lead right back to a Slav or semi-Slav. So I just played bishop f4 instead. Because there are some lines where I think it's beneficial for white if black has the pawn on c6 versus c5. If I were to play this line regularly as white, I know I'd be running into c5 followed by knight c6 a lot. So I feel like I've, in some ways, forced black into a slightly inferior line. This position is still fine for black, but maybe a small victory for white. So knight f6, e3, e6. Yeah, I don't like that move. I don't know if there's a huge reason to lock in the bishop. I'll add the engine, but I think moving bishop f5 or bishop to g4 would make more sense. Like, let's say bishop f5. Is there anything wrong with that? Yes, I can probably play c4, but then they can go e6. This looks standard. At some point, white might play c5 and grab more space and attack the black queen, but this isn't unusual for a London system position. But black plays e6, and I go ahead and play c4.
Check.
And I really hate moves like bishop b4 check. Like, if black were my student, I would roundly criticize them for that move, because they played it in like 5 seconds, and it's just an instant gratification check. Like, yes, white has to respond to that check, and you do develop a piece, but does the bishop really belong on b4? What is it really doing on b4? After knight c3 or knight bd2, it looks like its only fate is to exchange itself. Otherwise, after a future a3, black will have to drop back, and they've lost some time. So I think black has to think about their development a little harder than just whipping off bishop b4 check.
Check.
So then they played c5. This was surprising. I don't know that c5 is that bad of a move. Creates a lot of tension right away. I sort of feel like black is underdeveloped. But then again, I am pinned here. It's going to take a moment to get out of that pin. So perhaps it's not terrible. So I played d takes c5. The engine was saying a3 or c takes d5 might be better. A3, bishop
Check.
takes D2, queen takes D2. Yes, this is like the game, except we haven't exchanged any of the pawns. I suppose this line is worthy of consideration. C takes D5. I wasn't sure about knight takes D5, though. I wonder what the engine thinks here. So I didn't like the attack on the bishop on F4. Here it says A3 again. Bishop
Check.
takes D2, knight takes D2, knight takes F4, D takes C5 in between move, attacking the queen. I guess black could take G2 maybe, but I would take with the bishop.
Check.
And it thinks that this is better for white, despite the material equality. Yeah, maybe I can get a knight into D6. I don't know. I think I like the move that I chose better. Taking on C5. Or A3. Yeah, A3 also is pretty good. So I took, and black took with the queen. Yeah, probably bishop takes is the superior move. This also might retain the bishop pair, so black doesn't have to trade on D2. I still may play A3, either right now or very soon, and try to advance B4, but yeah, bishop takes C5 does look better. And the engine says C takes D5, knight takes D5, knight C4, attacking the queen. Queen B4 check, knight FD2, inviting black to take here. Take because of A3. Ooh, and suddenly black's queen is experiencing issues. If queen B5, we have the discovery knight D6, and our bishop is going to take the queen after bishop takes D6. So black would have to play queen A4, and now knight D6 anyways. Nice resource. Bishop takes D6, and the queen aligned with the light square bishop comes in handy. Queen takes C6. King E7, queen takes H8, and white has won the exchange. So that's kind of an engine line, but it illustrates one of the issues with black playing C5, the bishop on C8 being undefended. And I mentioned that I really wanted to avoid a developing move like bishop E2 because I thought knight C6 would just bring another piece into the equation and also attack D4. So I felt like I was going to have to move my D4 pawn soon anyways, so I figured let's just take on C5. But yes, almost certainly black should take here, and looks like black's still worse, but the game goes on. So queen takes C5 instead, and I played A3. The engine just says do this. Is that because... Okay, I think... Yeah, the engine might want me to play, like, say, after knight takes D5. I thought I was going to say swap the queens and then play a quick rook C1. But they might have something like knight D7 to defend the bishop and also defend the other bishop on C8. But it's actually saying after C takes D5, knight takes D5, just play A3 once again. Queen takes C1, rook takes C1, take D2, knight takes. Again, this bishop is hanging. Castles, bishop G3 with a big white advantage. Here, the dark square bishop looks fearsome. It's got a great diagonal to operate down. Yep, that's another reasonable continuation. So C takes D5 instead of the move I played A3, but this is also leading to a big advantage. Here I took the queen. Black castled. They could play D takes C4, but I was probably just going to continue with this. Because again, note the tactical point. If queen takes C4, I have rook C1, attacking the queen and also the bishop behind it, should the queen move. So white wins all the material back plus interest, because, yeah, if the queen moves somewhere and we get this in, it's actually just game over next move. Queen D6 mate. I don't even have to go for the rook on H8. So this is kind of a phantom threat. Queen takes C4. Bishop takes C4, and black really can't even take it because rook C1 is so strong. But instead of taking, black castled, then I x-rayed their queen, and black blundered. D takes C4, running into bishop D6. So I didn't see bishop D6 immediately. It took me a few seconds to see it, and I was looking at bishop takes C4 and rook takes C4. And I mentioned before how it's important when you're calculating not to like immediately play the first promising thing that comes to mind. But since I knew from looking at some similar lines before this that D takes C4, at best I'll just recapture and black's queen will move away. So like say take here, bishop takes. Black is going to see that bishop takes E6 as the threat. maybe they'll even see that bishop d6 is still a threat. They're going to move their queen away somewhere, like say here. So in that sense, bishop takes c4 and rook takes c4 are pretty similar. And once you see bishop d6, you really don't have to spend any time looking at those other two moves. Like bishop d6 is clearly the best move, and black has to move their queen and lose the rook. It's as simple as that. So I always recommend like trying to calculate as thoroughly as you can and not like insufficiently calculating certain moves. But when a move like jumps to the top of your candidate moves list right away, and everything about it just says, okay, this is the correct move, it is okay to play it, especially if time is at all concerned. So bishop d6, black played queen d5. I took, yeah, and just took the material,
Check.
and black resigned before I could recapture the queen. Yeah, and this is winning for white. It could take a while, but the position is symmetric, and I'm just up in exchange. And that rook for the minor piece will eventually tell. So I don't blame black for not wanting to play it out. All right, so I think one takeaway from this one is to avoid moves like bishop b4 check. You can see black, even a fairly high-rated player, played this move, and in my opinion, this is kind of where their troubles started. Maybe even with e6, because I think e6 was a little unnecessary. I would have tried to get the bishop outside the chain. Okay, thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.